the man who refused to believe. He had never seen a sun rise. He had never seen his mother's face. He had never seen the color of the sky, or the shape of a tree, or the way light breaks over water at dawn. He had been born into darkness, and darkness was all he had ever known. His name was Bartimaeus. And Bartimaeus had decided one thing, very early in his life: if he could not see it, it did not exist. They called him the philosopher of the marketplace. Every morning he sat at the same corner in Jericho, his back against the same warm stone wall, his wooden bowl on the ground in front of him. People passed. Coins dropped. And Bartimaeus talked. "Your God," he would say, tilting his blind face toward whoever had stopped. "Tell me about your God." And when they described the heavens, the creation, the hand of the Almighty moving over the waters, Bartimaeus would smile. Not a kind smile. A patient smile. The smile of a man who has heard a story so many times it no longer surprises him. "I have never seen the heavens," he would say. "I have never seen the waters. I have never seen the hand of anything. I have only ever felt the cold of night and the heat of day and the roughness of the stone behind my back. That is what is real. The rest is comfort for frightened people." Most walked away angry. Some threw extra coins, as if to compensate for the argument. Bartimaeus kept both the anger and the coins. But what he did not talk about, what he told no one, was the other thing. The way they looked at him. He couldn't see it, but he could feel it. The pause in a voice when someone realized he was blind. The slight softening, or worse, the slight hardening. The pity that curdled into dismissal. The way conversations shifted when he entered them, how people stopped speaking directly to him and began speaking around him, as if blindness had made him not just sightless but absent. He cannot see, so perhaps he cannot think. He cannot see, so perhaps he does not fully count. He had learned to wear his philosophy like armor. If he questioned everything loudly enough, people engaged with his mind and forgot about his eyes. But at night, alone, the armor came off. And in the dark, his permanent dark, Bartimaeus felt something he refused to name. The day Jesus came to Jericho, the city changed its sound. Bartimaeus heard it before he understood it: a swelling, a crowd noise different from the usual marketplace hum. Feet moving faster. Voices layering over each other. Children running. The particular electricity of a city that has decided, collectively, that something important is happening. "Who is it?" he asked a passing woman. "Jesus of Nazareth," she said, already moving. "The teacher. The healer. Come." She was gone. Bartimaeus sat still. He had heard the name. Everyone had heard the name. The blind man in Bethsaida. The leper colonies made clean. The boy in Nain they said had been dead and then was not. He had listened to these stories the same way he listened to all stories about God, with his head slightly tilted, his expression composed, his disbelief polished and ready. People see what they want to see. The desperate believe in miracles because the alternative is unbearable. The crowd grew louder. Closer. And then something happened inside him, something he had no philosophical framework for. Not a thought. Not an argument. Something older than both. A faint trembling in the chest, the way the ground trembles before you hear the earthquake. What if, said a voice somewhere beneath his armor. What if there is even the smallest chance? He crushed it immediately. He was not like the others. He was a man of reason. He had his dignity. The crowd was almost in front of him now. He could feel the displacement of air, the heat of 100 bodies moving together. He could hear fragments of conversation, someone weeping, someone laughing, someone calling out a name. No, he told himself. No. The crowd reached his corner. And the armor, all of it, every piece he had built and polished and maintained for 30 years, cracked. Jesus, Son of David. The words tore out of him. Raw. Unplanned. The truest sound he had ever made. The crowd turned on him immediately. Be quiet. A man's voice, sharp with irritation. Don't bother him with this. He's just the blind beggar. Not cruelly. Simply. Just. As if the word explained everything, closed everything, settled everything. Bartimaeus felt the old familiar shrinking the world, reminding him, as it did periodically, of exactly how much space he was permitted to occupy. He thought about going silent. About pulling the armor back on. Instead, Son of David, have mercy on me. He did not know where it came from. He couldn't have explained it. Some stubbornness, some fury, some terrible desperate thing that had been living underneath all his philosophy and had chosen this moment, this man, this crowd, this corner to finally be said aloud. The crowd noise shifted. Stopped. Someone touched his arm. Gently. Get up. He's calling for you. Bartimaeus stood. He had stood 10,000 times in this spot. He knew every stone under his feet. He stood with his usual steadiness. But his hands were shaking. He was guided through the crowd, and then the crowd opened, and he was standing somewhere quieter, and he could feel, not see, never see that there was someone directly in front of him. Not a large presence. Not thunderous. But something in the air around this man was different. Still. Like the moment before dawn, when the world pauses. What do you want me to do for you? The voice was not what he expected. He had expected authority, something grand, something that sounded like power performing itself. Instead it was quiet, direct, unhurried, as if they were the only two people in the world, and this conversation was the only thing happening in it, and nothing was more important than the answer to this simple question. Bartimaeus opened his mouth. He had a speech ready. Something about evidence. Something about what it would mean, logically, if a man who had never seen could suddenly see. Something that kept him protected, kept him behind his arguments, kept the armor on. What came out was, "Teacher, I want to see." 6 words. No philosophy. No protection. Just the truest thing he had ever said. 2 hands touched his face. Thumbs pressing gently against his closed eyelids, warm, deliberate, unhurried. And then the voice again, close now, barely above a whisper, "Receive your sight. Your faith has healed you." Nothing happened. 1 second. 2. And then. The world did not arrive gently. It did not ease him in. It did not give him time to adjust. It simply came. Light, first. Not a color. Not a shape. Just light, pure and absolute, flooding into him like water into a vessel that had been empty since birth. He had heard people describe brightness, he had catalogued it, stored it, filed it alongside all the other things he could not verify. He had not understood. He could not have understood. Then shapes, edges forming out of the brightness, gaining definition, gaining depth. A face materializing in front of him. A man's face, close, looking at him with an expression Bartimaeus had no name for and had never seen before, and would spend the rest of his life trying to describe to people who asked. Not pity. Not triumph. Something quieter than both. Then the world opened up behind the face, vast and overwhelming the crowd, dozens of faces, all watching with open mouths. The sky above them, enormous, far larger than anyone had ever managed to describe. Blue was not a word for what the sky was. He had heard the word blue his entire life and it had meant nothing, a sound, and now it meant everything, and the word was still completely inadequate. The ground under his feet. Brown. Dusty. Sun-cracked. His own hands, he raised them in front of his face and stared. He had touched these hands every day of his life. He knew every line, every callus, the particular shape of his knuckles. But he had never seen them. The world was too large. Too much. Too everywhere at once. He began to weep. Not gently. Not quietly. The weeping of a man releasing something that had been held inside for a very long time, something that had no name and needed none. Your faith has healed you. The words stayed with him long after the tears had stopped, long after the crowd had moved and the noise had settled and Jericho had returned to its ordinary afternoon sounds. Your faith. He turned this over carefully, the way he had always turned ideas over. A man of reason, examining a new proposition. He had not believed, he had been certain of that certain, right up until the moment he opened his mouth and called out. He had built his entire life on the principle of not believing. And yet, what was it, then, that made him call out not belief? Not certainty. Something smaller. Something much more fragile. The smallest possibility. The hairline crack in 30 years of armor. The voice beneath the philosophy that whispered, what if? And apparently that was enough. He gave away the wooden bowl. He didn't need it anymore, not because he could see, but because he understood something now about what he had actually been begging for all those years. It wasn't coins. He stood at the corner where he had sat for most of his life and looked at the stone wall he had leaned against every morning. He looked at it for a long time. It was smaller than he had imagined it. Rougher. More ordinary. Then he turned and walked away from it. Some said they saw him days later on the road out of Jericho walking among the disciples, moving with the crowd that followed the teacher north. They recognized him by his posture, still upright, still carrying something deliberate in the way he held himself. But his face, they said, was different. The man who had sat at that corner, the philosopher, the skeptic, the one who challenged everyone who passed, had always looked like someone defending something. Braced. Ready. The man walking north looked like someone who had finally put something down. Later, someone asked him, "When did you believe?" Bartimaeus was quiet for a moment. "I believed," he said slowly, "before he touched me. When I heard his voice, the way he asked what I wanted, as if I mattered, as if the question deserved a real answer." He paused. "I had spent my whole life insisting I needed to see before I could believe. And then I heard a voice that made me understand I had it completely backward." He looked at his hands. Still something he did often. Probably always would. "I had to believe first," he said. "Even just a little. Even just enough to call out." He shook his head slowly. "Then I saw,